I'm going to start by saying that design is a personal matter. In the recent years, and given our economical model and structures and societies, all the design discourse has been centered around strategy, solutions, results, methodologies, measurability. But the reality is, although many of these exist in our everyday life, we cannot escape our own perceptions. Piaget used to say, we do not know what we see what we know. The boundaries of what our limits are, the boundaries of what perceptions are not the true boundaries of our perceptions. And I think the way we see the world, the way each one of us sees the challenges, these preconceptions, the way we learn how to open ourselves to the peripheral vision, that is the essence of design. So I'm going to go personal, and I'm going to go political. So are you guys ready? Because it's not going to be the core business type of talk. This is a contemporary artist, Silva Meireles, of Brazil, challenging our preconceptions. At a certain point, stars and ants are the same. So I was born in Argentina. This is artist Joaquín Torres Garcia out of Uruguay, challenging not only our geographic location, but also the influence of Latin America on the world stage. And if we're going to go personal, this is where I was raised, and I lived through some interesting times, the military dictatorship. I was very young at the time, and I honestly could not really understand the true implications of what a totalitarian government would do to a country, to a society, but also to me as an individual. But one of the moments and one of the experiences I do remember very clearly was towards the end of the dictatorship. We had a war with England. Now we have this wonderful movie about the Iron Lady, Margaret Thatcher, and it was literally when the dictatorship in Argentina was at the end. My mother was from British descent, so my family was threatened. And in that situation, my father decided to exile us, my mother and me, to Chile, while he stayed with my brothers in Argentina to decide what would happen to our future. It was then in Chile, every single day we used to go to a cafe, and I would see my mother crying every single day while we watched the news on the television. The news on the television in Chile was talking about how Argentina was completely losing this war, a war that was absolutely unnecessary and devastating for our country. But on the other hand, we could also see how Argentina was telling us, Argentinians within our country, that we were winning this war, that victory was imminent. That moment for me was key. I was 11 years old. But being able to understand, it was more than political manipulation or the power of censorship and political discourse or ideology. This was about the existence of two parallel realities. The fact that two realities were happening right there, my family on one side, my family on the other. And the other concept that really changed the way I see the world was the idea of being able to go from the inside, moving out, and seeing my place from another place, taking that distance. This is not the outsider that looks in. This is not the insider that looks out. This is you seeing your place and your space within. So what do? I have questioned every damn thing, can I say damn? Every single time. I can't avoid it. It is the impetu of who I am. It is the impetu of my design. I'll keep on doing. I'm putting a lot of contemporary artists, Muntadas from Barcelona, political activist and artist that also challenges ideologies, censorship, and the manipulation of media. So I'm going to try to follow myself through this. His work about art and life. That means arte y vida, art and life, and that relationship. when we're defined as designers, I grew up I studied in Argentina and then studied in Los Angeles. And since then, we've always been defined as designers, as problem solvers. And that is what we do. I mean, we do solve problems. But for me, that's like the inevitable aspect of what we do. That's like the end product. That's the end of what we do. What I'm interested in is not the what we do. It is how we do it. For me, the question is, what are the questions we need to ask? Not if they're right questions, not if they're wrong questions. What are the relevant questions? And if we're able to take ourselves beyond the projects we work into challenging the questions of society, of borders, we're in a much more interesting space of discussion. The challenge doesn't come just from questioning what are the solutions to be solved. It comes from understanding structures, from finding its weaknesses, from finding the holes in society, and from seeing these as opportunities. Every single project has a possibility to understand society, to understand ourselves, and we're redefined consistently by that. That is what keeps us growing. I'm not in this just to design for formal issues. I believe in the depth of creativity, and I think there is an opportunity for us to shape society, to shape the work we do. Not every single project, but our thoughts can, consistently, and we should be challenging every single way. Louise Bourgeois, I admire her very much. Wonderful, one of the great contemporary artists of our time. So how do we do this? How do we challenge our own preconceptions personally? And for me, it's a question of embracing ambiguity. What does this mean? I mean, it's a hard term to explain. It's a hard term even for me to try to create a logical statement about it. So I'm not going to try. I'm going to literally tell you what my gut feeling is, which many times is as strong, and then my intuitive feeling is as strong and as any pragmatic or linear thought. For me, intuition, and I'm going to mix it with the laws of association by Ballard, and based on James Williams' ideas. For me, it is a space that comes together exactly with contradictory ideas. When contradictory ideas take place, the space of interaction, that's the space I'm interested in, the one that really truly questions all the situations. It is not about pragmatism or linearity. We will never get to anything very interesting if we just follow the line. We need to be able to open ourselves to this type of discourse and to this type of dialogue. It's a space of non-restraint, undefined. It's not neutral, it's highly active. It's a space for discourse and the contrary side of questions. We have to have that type of intuitive space where random things can happen, where we can question the thoughts, but we can also go from the inside, from the research, from the strategy, outside again, and challenge it for the second time. This is not research, pragmatic thinking, solution. This is about challenging everything, coming out again and challenging it from every single opportunity. We're not interested in projects that have that answers are all constraints. We're interested in the dialogue on constraints and possibilities. So it's that dialogue. It's not about one against the other. It's both against each other. The space in the middle, that's what we really care about. So let me talk a little bit about Le Corbusier, because I've been reading a lot about him recently, and I found this idea of ambiguity. This is not mine. I mean, everybody's been talking. Philosophers. If you read Jean Nouvel, if you read a lot of creatives, philosophers have talked about concepts of ambiguity, and everybody has defined it differently. That's what's so interesting about it. It's not a question to define it. It's a question to find yourself within it. Le Corbusier created one of the most compelling and biggest changes in architecture when he designed the modular, which was this idea of creating proportions, a system of proportions for architecture. He took the shell, a natural form. He took a mathematical model to literally break down that shell and bring human proportions to the relationship of that model. He believed so much in it, he designed around it. I mean, you'll see there with this idea of his modular. This is his cabin, which he once again designed with this idea of the shell and his modular. But it really came about for his personal interest about this new form and the shells. it wasn't just about this very pragmatic. I mean, he is one of the leaders of modernist and thinking and architecture. But towards the end of literally his life and career, he started to bring in together his interests about the ambiguity and about overlaying. And it is this place that I find interesting. It is that paradox that I find interesting. Not one nor the other, but the fact that both of them started to merge and talk to each other, against each other. This is his collection of shells. He literally was inspired also by a philosopher called Valeroy that talked about the ambiguous object. And this is his collection. He was very thorough at photographing, about collecting it. And what came about with this collection was a series of thoughts about architecture. And let me just read it because I don't want to paraphrase it and do it wrong. This led to the question what it means to design something. What is invention and how does it function? How does a new form arise? What happens when the artist designs? What role are played by things he has read and remembered? How much is unplanned? And I think in design, the more we try to categorize it, the more we're forgetting that the essence and the spirit of design comes from within, comes from our own interests, comes from our personal, the things that surround us, the subtle things. And those are the ones that raise the question, and those are the ones we should try to bring to every single project, because the new ideas arise. Once again, his inspiration, he used to call them the objet, I'm going to pronounce it not very well, but objet à réaction poétique. So what does this mean to us? This went a little bit fast, but when it comes back to how we try to bring this into our design every day, we have implemented a model which is pretty much having on one side projects that come to the studio, on the other side projects that we developed ourselves. Once again, this is about things that we care about. I come from a very political and social background, so I care very much about those things. But sometimes it's about the personal things. Sometimes it's just about a personal interest. And the key to the depth of what we want to create as a space, as a studio, is the intersection. Those white little spaces, that's what we really care about, because that's where the dialogue really begins. Philosophically, I don't believe in manifests, because I don't believe in ideologies, but I believe in just random thoughts and things that we care about. Irrepressible idealism. Only the idealists change the world. I believe in being naive, and I believe in trying to shape whatever it is, even if it's day to day. Passion is what drives me. What I have not lived defines me. Relentless spirit of inclusion. Wonderful things happen out of confusion. What I do is intrinsic to who I am. Nothing is worth compromising for, and I mean nothing. Easy is soulless. So this is where I lived for the last 8 years. I traveled in many cities and lived in many cities in the US and then Canada. And then for the last 8 years, I was in Mexico City. I have to say much of what I'm talking about right now, much of this idea of ambiguity and chaos and the creativity spirit, I literally learned from Mexico. Because it's inevitable that you're going to feel it in a way that I honestly think many times in societies that are very orderly, we sort of are everything's just too clean, just to order, where there's nothing to challenge, there's nothing to confuse. One of the projects we developed in the studio that it ended up being a book, because it ended up being the best medium for it, was a collaboration with architect Alberto Kalach. He led the project for 10 years, working with scientists, with geologists, historians, to replenish the lake in Mexico City. You saw the city. This was 15th century Mexico. This is the city, and this is the lake. And now you're going to like this one. It's 19th century, yellow city, blue lake. 1950, city lake. 2000, city lake. What we care about is this area. You'll see, this is the area he's been trying, and he's been working. It's a project that's been going for many years to replenish. The thoughts, the ideas, there were 50 boxes of archives. And we were working with Alberto, designing the Library of Mexico City, designing schools, and we always saw this project flying in his studio. We came up and we said, what are you doing with this? Why aren't more people working with it? It would be taken by a political government and then throw it on the side. So we decided to literally do a book as a means, as an opportunity to exchange ideas. Not because we cared just about the book. This wasn't about, let's do a designy book. This is about what is the means for us to bring 50 boxes, bring them together, bring the thoughts together, and create opportunities for talk. We raised the money for this book. We published the book. We co-edited the book to distribute. When we were raising money, we met with the Minister of Culture of Mexico. Before they even gave us the money, they did not give us the money, but he said, I don't have the money for this book right now, but I will present it to the president tomorrow. So this project was presented to President Calderon maybe 2, maybe 3 days after we simply met. That's what we cared about. It wasn't, the book was just the excuse to be able to push it forward, ripple it. Doesn't matter where it goes, let it live. We ended up getting the money, designing the book. I'll just go through it a little bit fast. And that shows in depth very, many graphs and diagrams that explain where Mexico came from. If you imagine Venice, for me it was very difficult to understand that the city I showed you was like Venice was. This was Mexico many years ago. So that's where we came from in Mexico. This is in the 50s. This is like, literally, there's even trees. I mean, it's unbelievable. Now, and the orange images you see right now is basically people that have just taken the areas of Texcoco where the lake was and just built their house. So this is a problem of a problem of like literally a sustainability problem, an urban problem, ecology. This project would bring down 30% of the contamination. You say contamination of the, yeah? Am I saying the right word? Of the city. And what it did, it raised many questions and possibilities. With the book, they were able to open, to give talks at many museums and, yeah. So then the other project that I wanted to share with it, which is ours, is with this idea of like challenging what is going on. I do believe that maybe the best part of me as a designer comes from having my children. There was nothing more creative in my life than the day, the year I have 2 kids, a 4 and a 6-year-old, of having those 2 kids. I wanted to bring them from a very young age, honestly from 2, to this world I inhabit, and I love it. It's a world of art. I absolutely love everything in it. Film, architecture, design, I love it. And I love books. I have a love of books from a very young age. When I went to buy books for my children, the only books I could find were these books about, Picasso. And, so they would take images of Picasso, say, this is red, yellow, and blue, so you teach your kid the colors through Picasso. And it would drive me crazy because, in all honesty, I don't need my child to know Picasso. I need my child to live Picasso, to experience Picasso. And in my head, I kept on seeing this book, and I said, I would like to find the book where Picasso told me how he saw color. Not somebody in a marketing thing saying this is an art book. And I thought, well, why not? Why, who has this? And I did find, Warhol did a book on a children's book. So this started 5 years ago. I was working with museums. I was working with a fantastic curator called Patrick Charpenel. And I just ran this idea randomly by him. And literally in like a term of a month, we already had like the budget and the money and everything to start this project. It was a publishing project, and the key to this publishing project was to change the way children see art, by experiencing art, by the work, not of us as designers. I mean, I didn't even, it wasn't about me designing anything. It was about bringing to the world the possibility of a child seeing the work of art from the hands, the vision of artists, period. Now, the trick is that you can't have your neighbor who's a painter. You literally needed to have the Picassos of our times. We went for the Picassos of our times. We started with this one, which you're going to see. This is going to be a little video. They're non-linear. They're whatever the artist wants to bring to the world. We're creating that space and opportunity for them. And the kids have that space of opportunity to interpret and experience art. If you're seeing a Picasso at age 2, or a Carlos Morales, when Carlos Morales is 50 or 60 and my child is 80 and he sees it at a museum, the relationship he's going to have of understanding what museums are, they're not going to be museums anymore. They're going to be familiar objects that lived in their home. Your entire relationship of art changes. We've got highly amazing people, architects around the world, Pritzker Prize winners aligned. Francis Alice, amazing artists that are going to be working on this project. Is a project that's taken over 4 years and have taught me one thing: patience. Not everything has to happen immediately. By the way, on the results and all these like wonderful measurabilities, I don't know how people understand success. For me, success is doing something that is worth, that is meaningful, that makes a difference. And honestly, I'm doing it for my kids. I am doing this for my kids. That's what I care about. If the world benefits from it and I can change something, fantastic. But this value legacy is for them. So this is Carlos Amorel. With the words from Louise Bourgeois. Again, I admire her tremendously. I do, I redo, I undo, and thank you.